Only one can win. DOGMAN versus Mothman in West Virginia. Dear Scary Stories NYC, I love the art you created for the incident I described to you, but I just want to point out that this happened at night. It wasn't at sunrise or sunset, which is what your image looks like to me. It was much darker. Also, I don't know if the Mothman had ears or horns or antennae, or whatever those are coming out of his head, but it was dark, so he might have. You got his red eyes and bat wings exactly right, though. It's fine to use that art as long as you include this email or write your own clarification. If this had happened to us when it was that bright out, we would have gotten some photos or video of the event. In fact, the entire story is about us trying to get lights on the two of them, so that we could take pictures and become rich and famous. This story happened to me personally and features a dogman, which I did not know existed here in West Virginia, and the Mothman, who of course everyone knows, has been flying around this part of the country since your late friend John Keel came down here to investigate in the 60s. I was with some buddies of mine who I had been friends with since we were kids, and we were around 18 or 19 when this happened. I can't ask them to include their sides of the story though, since they won't talk to me anymore. They've blocked me on everything, even their phones. They're mad at me because I don't believe the stuff that TV tells me is true anymore. They say that if you don't believe TV, then you're a Republic-rat or something. But I say anyone who believes TV in current year is probably insane. We stopped being friends by the end of 2016, and they have me blacklisted from working at a certain chain food restaurant that I used to work at with them. How do guys go from being your best friends to not allowing you to work because you disagree about, like, who to vote for? I thought that was supposed to be a basic right, to vote for whoever you wanted to once you got to be 18. Apparently, when you become 18, you have to lose your right to think for yourself, or else you don't have any friends anymore. So anyway, since I have no friends to distract me, let's jump right into what happened the night I saw one cryptid literally terminate another one right in front of my eyes. I meant to go take some pictures of the cemetery where this happened for your video, but I forgot. There is a Google Street View of it, but it's literally from 2008. It's older than my youngest brother, so the images they have are very dark and blurry. Maybe that's for the best though, because that illustrates the point I keep trying to make. We couldn't get a good clear shot of what we were seeing because it was so dark in that night, and also because I think there's some quality to that entire area that somehow makes it harder to see. The air seems thicker over there to me, even during the day, but I'm not sure why I'm even saying that. It always seems to be dark and foggy, or at least misty over there by that cemetery and the Lutheran church. But also next door and even up and down Route 17, at least in my opinion. Maybe there is some natural scientific reason that it always looks so misty and spooky over there. But in either case, it does look spooky. So I was borrowing my dad's car and Sally had his dad's car. His name is Salvatore, but we called him Sally. I had Jerome with me, and he had Jared with him, and we were just driving around at night. We had seen a movie earlier, but at that point we were just enjoying being free and outside on our own in the middle of the night. This was still a relatively new thing to us, as like I said, we were just 18 or 19. When Sally cut around in front of me and slammed on the brakes, I had no choice but to stop quickly as well, otherwise I was going to slam into his rear hard and smash both our dad's cars up. In a second, Sally was out of his car and at my window, and before I could tell him what I thought of his stopping short in front of me, he was whispering and telling me and Jerome to get out of the car and look at the graveyard. I hadn't even realized where we were until he said the word graveyard. It's not a word I normally use. I say cemetery. Graveyard is more to the point though, isn't it? When he said graveyard, my mind was prepared to get out of that car and see a yard filled with the graves of previous generations of people just like me and my bros. What I was not prepared to see was that there was a battle going on in the murky darkness by two creatures that were not human. We all ran off the road to the edge of the cemetery, and there was an immense 7 or 8 foot tall bipedal man thing with a long extended face, like a wolf might have. And it was battling this bird-type creature that must have been 5 or 6 feet tall itself, but had bat-like leathery wings, as large as a glider built to carry 2 people. Both creatures possessed an intense eye shine. The wolf-headed man seemed to have an off-white color to his eyes, but the big bat bird had huge round eyes, shining bright red, that reminded me of the red lights at an intersection. When I think back on the fighting that we were barely witnessing in that murk, I have to say that I don't think I would risk getting so close to the action if the situation ever presented itself to me again. The dogman or werewolf was picking rocks and things up off the ground and hurling them at the man-bat-bird, who all my buddies were immediately calling the Mothman. It looked like the dogman kept scoring hits, or else the Mothman was narrowly avoiding them as he constantly changed course up in the air. That's another strange thing about the Mothman, his wings, and the odd way they tended to act and react. Like I could hear the leather on the wings flapping sometimes better than I could see the wings themselves. They sounded like a ship's sail blowing in the wind, but actually seeing those wings clearly, black wings against a black sky, that was not so simple a thing to accomplish. So we were watching the dogman hurl projectiles up, and the Mothman swooped down to make attacks from the sky, and eventually, Jerome pointed out to me that the Mothman wasn't moving his wings to fly. What I mean is, while we could hear the leather of the wings flapping in the wind, the wings themselves were not moving. He was rising up and swooping down as though he were flapping his wings, but he was not. It was almost as though the giant wings were only for show, and that he was really flying or levitating off the ground using some other means. It's hard to describe to someone who hasn't seen it. One time it rose straight up in the air without flapping its wings, although the wind flapped them as it rose. There was one time when the Mothman did actually move his wings, and so we know that he could when he wanted to. This was not done in order to fly, though. We saw him flap his wings one time at the dogman, who was greeted with a gust of wind so strong that he slipped backward into a tombstone. So the wings were indeed powerful the one time we saw them used and moved. The rest of the time, they were more or less spread out and fairly stationary. I have no explanation for any of this. I am only trying to recall the details and report them accurately. I cannot explain some of the things that we saw. So we were trying to videotape what was happening, but you literally couldn't even make out the eye shine in the videos we shot on our phones. It was just darkness, and the sounds of us whispering to each other. Complete garbage videos. Sally had the flash on his camera on, but it didn't light anything that was that far away. That was when one of us got the brilliant idea to get back in the cars, turn them toward the action, and put the high beam headlights on so we could get pictures and videos of the fight. I wanted to make $1 million. I felt like if we got footage on 4 cameras at once, of the dogman and the Mothman, that the 4 of us would be set for life. I mean, with the same scene shot from 4 angles at once, nobody could ever accuse us of faking it. Sally and Jared ran into Sal's dad's car, but the sounds of the doors slamming shut caused that Mothman to flip out. It stopped messing with the dogman at all and began swooping down on the road from above. Jerome and I were face down on the edge of the road, spitting gravel out of our mouths, as that birdman with the bat wings screeched painfully and swooped down repeatedly. I could hear Sally and Jared screaming like little girls when that thing flew down toward them, but I was too scared to make a break for my dad's car, so I'm not in a position to judge them. Forgotten in all of this was the Dogman. Lying on the ground as I was, I suddenly felt him stomping out of the cemetery and onto the road past me. I knew he was approaching my friends in their car because I could hear them screaming again. I looked up, needing to see what was happening. The Mothman swooped down toward the car, and the Dogman leaped up to grab it by the end of one of its wings. Swinging his arm hard, the Dogman caused the man-bat to slam from out of the sky onto the road right next to my dad's car. When they collided, I could swear I saw sparks shoot out of the road, and I assumed that was caused by the friction of the Mothman hitting the blacktop so hard. The Dogman picked the slumped Mothman up off the road, and, with both arms, threw the creature over my head and back into the murky darkness of the cemetery. It landed with the sound of solid things breaking on top of some people's tombstones. This was when I saw the Dogman walk resolutely into that cemetery, and I got up to run to the relative safety of my dad's car. From there, I witnessed an absolutely incredible sight. That Dogman, with muscles like something from a superhero movie, was holding the Mothman down with one of his mighty arms, while the other pushed itself deep into the belly of the Mothman, pulling out handfuls and handfuls of wires. It looked to me like he was tearing electronics out of the bat creature, and there were sparks and pops going on all over the place. Was the Mothman some kind of a machine? Or was it merely carrying a machine that the Dogman was destroying? It was too hard to tell in such dim lighting. My former buddy Jerome thought it was a fallen angel, and that the sparks we were seeing were the light of God emanating from his belly as he exploded in illumination. I never went to Sunday school, so it looked more like an electrical disruption and a fire to me. But again, it was so dark and the situation so weird that I can't tell you for sure that Jerome was wrong or that I was right. At around that point, Salvatore turned his car to face the Dogman, and for a brief instant, he was fully lit by the headlights of that car. I do mean that it was brief, as the Dogman put his arm in front of his face, then ran off into the darkness to the side of the light. Rather than illuminate the entire cemetery as we had expected, the effect of shining the headlights caused one portion of the yard to be as bright as daylight, but this made the rest of it look even darker, just because of the way human eyes work. It would have worked fine if the creature stood still and posed for us, but it clearly preferred darkness, and it fled right back into it. What I did see in that split second, though, was a sight that returns to me every single day in my quiet moments, and sometimes at night in bad dreams. This was a dog with a crazy look on his face. Not crazy in a cute or funny way. Crazy in an absolutely inexplicable way. This creature was thinking things that I could not guess. It knew things that I would never know. How could I even begin to guess at its motivation when I was still trying to understand how it could even be real? So this crazy-looking dog got headlights shined on him. Then he covered his dog face with a surprisingly human-looking forearm. Don't get me wrong, it was just as furry as the rest of the animal, but I mean to say it was shaped like the arm of a well-muscled human male, just one covered in a thick growth of dog fur. That forearm was connected to a chest like that of a young Schwarzenegger. The torso narrowed down to being even thinner than the youthful Arnold was, as that was where the figure returned to looking like a canine. The legs looked as a dog's hind legs should, although they were somehow adapted to being the only legs on the creature. I didn't understand then, nor do I understand now, how its feet could look so very canine, while its paws looked like a wolfen adaptation of human hands. I'm not sure if it had 3 fingers or 4, but I know I saw what looked like a thumb. This was how it was able to grab the Mothman's wing and pull it out of the sky with one paw, because that paw was in fact a hand with an opposable thumb. How can such a creature exist? Yet I do believe that what the four of us saw that late night was in fact a living being of some strange sort. At least, I feel that way about the Dogman. As for the Mothman, I'm not so sure. I saw it torn apart, but there was no blood anywhere. I saw sparks instead. It seemed to be electric. Unless Jerome is right, and it was a fallen angel. Neither of us can ever really know, so it's not worth arguing the point. Although it is a fascinating thing to sit around and consider. So, where was I in the story? Oh, right. Sally had his headlights square on the monster. Then it darted off into darkness and I got paranoid. I was like, I'm out of here, and I started the engine. Sally got just as spooked as I did, and the two of us took off together down the road. The Dogman ran out after us, throwing flaming and sparking parts of what I think was the former Mothman, if I'm not mistaken. One hit my bumper with such a sound that I started doing mental calculations about how long it was going to take me to pay for getting that bumper fixed. I also hit the gas hard because of one of those flaming and sparking bits of alien or government technology smashed through one of my dad's car windows. I was never going to be able to pay the repairs for that off. You know, it's kind of funny thinking back on it. I was less afraid of losing my life and more afraid of my dad being angry at me and punishing me. I drove my dad's car up over 50 miles an hour, but I could still make out that Dogman running after us in my rearview mirror. It hurled its final piece of sparking Mothman at Sally's dad's car and missed. Then the beast dropped to all fours, and you might not believe this, but he actually started to gain on us. I was going pretty fast, but he was able to equal and surpass that once it was down on all fours. Jerome was ranting and weeping and saying that this Dogman was a servant of Satan and that he would be able to outrun the car, and that Satan made his creatures stronger than God's and that the Dogman would never tire and that we were doomed and all this kind of stuff. He was saying all this like he knew it to be a fact, and I didn't know any better, so I figured we're doomed. I was more scared than I had ever known I could get scared. That's how scared I was. I wanted to cry like Jerome was doing, but I was a bit too alarmed and panicked to feel sad just yet. I decided that if we were going to be dragged to hell for all eternity, well, it wouldn't hurt for me to make one last-minute escape attempt. I floored the gas pedal, and I became one with my dad's car. We went to our top speed. Then, the car and I were both rattling and shaking all over. I watched in the rearview mirror as the Dogman and Sally both faded into my past. The Dogman had finite energy after all. He was not supercharged by Satan to run forever, like the Energizer Bunny. He was very powerful, but he was limited. And he was a finite living creature, not something supernatural and not something paranormal. At least, that's how I feel about what happened that night. So the next morning or afternoon, we all went back in Sally's dad's car to look for Mothman parts to bring home. Neither car had ended up with any marks at all on it, and none of us got in trouble for anything at all. That was great because no punishment, but it sucked in a way because we had no proof that what we went through had even happened. So we searched the road, we walked through the cemetery, and we explored some of the brush around that drive. But we never found so much as a screw. It's almost like nothing that I've been remembering to you for the last 20 minutes even happened. But I can never forget that night. I saw the Dogman utterly thrash and ruin the Mothman, who may have been alien technology in the end, unless our government can build robots like that. And if they can, why do you think they assign them to bothering West Virginia teens in the middle of the night? I know I saw it, but I'm not sure what I saw when I saw Dogman versus Mothman in West Virginia. Without Dear Joanne, there could be no Dogman. Please join us in thanking Joanne Maracle for making this episode possible. Joanne donated to us using our super thanks button located under each of our YouTube videos, and we're very grateful to her. You know, you can also join one of our channel membership clubs. Then when you donate, you can check out our weekly Sunday secret uncensored stories about Dogman. Like yesterday, we had a new members only secret episode about a guy who claims he found a cave that Dogman had been living and eating inside of. I'd tell you more, but it's not a story I can repeat on this channel without getting in trouble. If you'd like further clarification, don't worry. Here comes our international TV spokesmongrel, Henry Lee Dogman, to explain the inexplicable. Hank? Thanks, Biggie. And thanks to all of you for watching this far. If you liked it, please click like. If you'd like to see more of our work, please subscribe. And also click that bell icon if you'd like to be notified when we put out a new episode. To become an executive producer, you can donate to us through the thanks button under each of our videos or through our paypal.me/PeterBernard209 page. To receive cool perks like secret uncensored Dogman episodes far too wild to ever run on this channel, you can become a YouTube channel member by clicking the join button. Or join our PayPal subscribers club at peterbernard.com. Joining either at the $3 a month level or above gets you access to our over 25 hours of secret uncensored Dogman stories available nowhere else. Do you have a scary story about Dogman or some other kind of high strangeness that happened to you? Let us know by emailing us at scarystoriesnyc@gmail.com or by leaving us a voicemail message at 804-LA-SCARY. You may need to call back on that one. It cuts off after, I think, 3 minutes. And if you don't want to do any of that stuff, thank you for simply watching to the end. Good night, and have a scary tomorrow.
Come back for more scary stories.